All right, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, good evening.
So, for tonight, the program that we have is called Unmute Your Mic. We're going to be asking you guys to unmute your mic soon. And basically, here's how the evening is going to go. This evening is all about us sharing our experiences, especially for the youth, to be able to be heard, to be able to know that the feelings that you have are valid when it comes to regarding your experience in church. What we have is that, like, the goal that we have for this evening is just to hear and to validate the feelings that we have with the experiences, whether good or bad, that we've had within the church, the experiences with different events in church, the experiences with our relationship with friends, our relationship with church members, all of those things. We're going to be just having two questions, one main question and the other one sort of like a follow-up question. And if there's anyone else who comes in later, we can go through and just share it again of what exactly we're doing. And the question that I want you guys to think about, and Brianna would also share some things afterwards, is the question of what has your experience been in the church? What has your experience been in the church? And this can range from your experience growing up to being in Pathfinders or in youth group, your interactions with other youth or adults inside or even outside of the church. In terms of how do you relate with them? These can be good things. These can be funny things. This could be things where you were encouraged, things where you were frustrated, things that you were sad. However you were feeling. What has your experience been? And what we want to try to do is we just want to be able to listen to you and to hear you out. That's the main question. The second question that we want to ask, and this one's more of a minor question. We want to focus more on that first one. The second one is, what has that experience taught you on how we should interact with other people? The theme for this week that we had is connecting, being able to connect with God, being able to connect with other people, not just on a spiritual level, but emotionally, mentally, being able to hear them and know who they are as a person. So that's what we're going to be doing for this evening. As we will continue, I ask that you would bow your heads with me as we would seek the Lord in prayer. Father in heaven, this night we come to you and we ask that you would be with us. Lord, we know that you are the one who created us with all the emotions and feelings that we have. And Lord, as we would share our experience within the church with one another, may we be able to grow closer to one another. May your spirit be with us this evening. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So we have a few ground rules that we would like to let you guys know so that we have everything sort of in order for this unmute your mic section. So the first rule is by staying on this meeting, you are agreeing to keep things here confidential. And so there's an exception to this rule, which is that if someone shares something about hurting someone or themselves or is in some sort of danger, we have the responsibility to report this and contact the authorities. Outside of that, everything in this meeting will stay confidential. 2, there doesn't need to be any use of names when we are telling our stories. Just keep everything anonymous. 3, only share your experience so that we're not going off of somebody's biased experience or you're hearing something that might not have been the full story. Please only share your own experience so that we know that it's authentic and you know exactly what has happened in that situation. Number 3, be respectful. Everybody's experience is their own experience, and every feeling that they're feeling is valid. So please be respectful of everybody's stories, everybody's emotions, and allow others to speak on what they need to speak on. Number 5, the moderators, which is myself and Pastor Beck, reserve the right to interrupt if we deem the conversation to be unhealthy or toxic. So for example, It's okay to be angry and frustrated, but there is a difference between venting that anger and being hurtful or malicious. So if you're being hurtful or malicious in any sort of way, we have the right to kind of rein you back in and allow things to become a lot more peaceful and healthy again. So those are just the ground rules, and if people are coming in again, we can go over them again so that everybody's on a level playing field and understand what's happening here. Okay.
Yeah. So again, there's some people who came on. Uh, we well, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be writing it in the chat, the questions, and we'll just go over them again. There's some people who have just arrived. Let me just put that in there. So, oh,
If you feel so and you don't want to reveal yourself to us, that is fine. If you want to stay anonymous, you can change your names to stay anonymous. But if you choose to, you can also just use your name if you feel comfortable.
also, if you would like, if you want to just type it out, you can type it out to Brianna or myself. You can go there and send it privately, and we can just read it. We can just
Mhm.
read whatever that experience is there. What we want is just we want you to have an opportunity to be heard. We want you to have an opportunity to have your feelings and emotions be in a place where you feel validated. So here's the questions again for those who just came in. What has your experience been within the church? This can range from growing up to Pathfinders, so youth group, to interactions with other youth or adults in or outside the church. This could be good experiences, bad experiences, funny experiences, encouraging, inspiring experiences, any experience that you've had that you want to share with us. We're open to listening. And the second one is, what has that experience that you had, uh, what has that experience taught you on how we should interact with others? So as we start, maybe I can even ask Brianna if you can even put on in the chat the ground rules. Put it.
Okay.
Yeah. So the floor is now open. Would anyone like to start to share? Um, if you don't want, you don't have to turn on your camera, whatever you want. You know, this is just an open opportunity for anyone to be able to share. Oh, also, if someone is talking and you would like to come in, what you can do is you can just private message Brianna, and then she'll have like a list of who's going to be going next, just so that it's nice and neat. Anyone have any experiences that you'd like to share?
Hello.
Hey, Stefan.
Yeah, evening everyone. My experience has my experience in the church has been quite a memorable one. I grew up as a Seventh-day Adventist in Jamaica, Norwood, and I used to hang around with kids, and I can just remember just the fellowship. It was something to look forward to every Sabbath.
Hmm.
Meet up with new people from different churches, as well as meeting up with your friends that you don't see during the week. So it's always that distinct time where you just spend time with those specific people.
Hmm.
I mean, the thing that probably made it difficult for me growing up, just to add to that positive benefit of the Sabbath, was I would always it would just kind of it became repetitive at times because it became predictable.
You
You
mean
know
going
what?
to church?
Yeah,
Hmm.
going to church became very repetitive. As a young person, seeing how my friends during the week would interact and see how they go to movies and they play football on Sabbath, there was always that part where I longed for. So growing up, the Sabbath, even though it had many benefits, because I could go picnic and lunch with my friends, I would also become bored and weary of it. I would want to do anything, would want to interact with many other people. And I do believe that that is happening to, well, it has happened to many people. I think a lot of people can relate to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I personally resonate with that. I grew up in the church as well, and I was probably like your friends, being the one to play on Sabbath. But I see where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I
the good thing is,
definitely.
oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
go ahead.
Okay. The good thing, I mean, there was that time where I felt bored about it, but see, the amazing and the blessing about just being a Seventh-day Adventist is when you come to your senses and to a level of maturity spiritually. I mean, you basically gotten your lashing. You tasted you gotten it of that taste of what of how unfulfilling life is without God.
Mm-hmm.
You begin to reflect on all those things that you have developed, that I've developed. I began to reflect on a lot of things that I developed when I was growing up. And it's amazing because it's still fresh. Like it's not stale. It's not something that is unfulfilling. There's clearly a distinction between having those meaningful relationships on the Sabbath or with people, with like interacting with people.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
In
Thank you.
I could. This is Shireen here. It's okay. I can give my name. I am probably a little bit older than most of you in the chat and participants this evening, so I'm going to speak about my son. And I remember as a teenager, he was very good at football, and it came down to when he was about 15 years old. He came home with a form for me to sign for him to practice with a particular club, but their main feature day was going to be on Saturdays.
Mhm.
Well, of course, I didn't sign the form. And I don't think he's ever forgiven me
Mhm.
because every time something comes up, it's about mommy not letting him go to the NFL. And we could have been a millionaire, and I would have been his manager. And he's quite an adult now, and I'm telling you, I don't think he's ever let it go. For him, and he, grew up in the church, went to Crawford, he did the whole thing, and it was like, what is the problem? It's kind of like the God understand kind of thing, but that's where the compromise comes in, right? So I stood my ground, and he is still holding on to it. I blighted his future by not giving him that opportunity where he believed he would have gone to the NFL. I wonder how many of you have that experience in your family or similar, whether it was basketball or football or something similar. I see somebody smiling there. They know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And mind you, I am one of those parents who did not grow up in the Adventist church. I converted as an adult. So, for me, it was really like having to hold on to the fact that I believe this today, I believe this now, I'm going to stand for what I believe with. Because, when you get into a compromise situation, you're going to have to do quite a bit of backpedaling later on when it comes back to haunt you, when you are not consistent, when you are not fair and firm, So where do we draw the line? I think that that question for that scenario that started off with, I think it was Nathan or somebody was talking about it. I think it's a common one that we face as people who observe the Sabbath. So I'm wondering what's the takeaway for that one today.
To your question, I would argue that I would say you did not make a bad decision. 'Cause I grew up in Jamaica, went to Adventist from I knew whatever. But I know this gentleman in my church back home who gave his son the opportunity to do track and field. And Jamaica's big on track and field. And the moment he said yes, he hasn't come back to church yet. And he doesn't seem to have any inclination to do that. So I don't fault your decision by any means.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Again, I just want to share, there's some people who came in. This is a safe place to share. What was shared was, sometimes a little bit questioning of what we believe as a church. And I would like to say that that's healthy. It's unhealthy to keep in the questions and doubts that we have. God says, come let us reason together. He's very willing and open to talk about hard questions. And sometimes we don't get the answers right away. So thank you so much for sharing. This is a safe place where you can share any of the grievances that you've had within the church that you had, good and bad experiences. This is a chance where you'd be able to share. I'm not sure, for those who came in, are you able to see what we wrote down earlier in the chat? I'm not exactly sure. So let me put in the question again for those who came in, just in case you're not able to see it. So for those the new ones who came in, there's questions that I posed there. The main question that we're asking is, what has your experience been within the church? This is your chance to unmute your mic to be able to share good, bad, whatever experience that you've had that you'd like to share, just to have your feelings heard. Anyone else?
I have something. How would you try to pose the question without saying anything? How would you deal with coming from another church?
Non-Adventist church?
No, an Adventist church,
Okay.
where the church environment was controlled by a certain group of people, right? Okay, I'll just share my experience. I used to go to another church before my current church, and it was almost like the people dictated as to what you were supposed to do. And being newly baptized, so before I was Pentecostal, before I became an Adventist, and Garrett just left. So I was Pentecostal before, so this was a whole new different environment that I was coming into. And being a young person in the church, and then getting thrown into basically office, and then saying, no, what you're doing is wrong. You're not supposed to do it this way. You have to do it my way, or you can't be involved in the department. So how, as a young person, I was supposed to deal with it? I got frustrated and just left the department. And then it just got more, there was lots of nitpicking. And there was this one instance where a young man who is not Adventist came to the church. It was a youth event that we were having. So I went over, I said, it's really nice to have you. That time I was the AY leader. I said, it was nice to have you. I hope you come back throughout the week again. We're having this, this, and this. And there was that same particular group of people were sitting at a couple benches from where I was standing talking to this young person. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's the boy she looked to date? Why is she dating him? Look how he looked. If I was where I was standing and I heard them, And I know the young man heard, and he just went, I have to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. And he never came back. And then I brought it up at the board meeting, and they turned it around that I was wrong for bringing up something like that at the board meeting. So as a young person, how am I supposed to let go of stuff like that or deal with people that I may encounter like along my spiritual journey that are like that?
Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
I just wanted to interject for the benefit of myself, who is in the role of scribe tonight. I am taking note of the questions on the table, but my understanding is that tonight is not the night we're answering so much. We just want to hear the concerns, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But I mean, if someone else wants to share, that's okay too. But you know, our main goal is to be heard. But if they're asking a question and they want to hear also, then we're okay with that too.
Okay, I just want to check because so far I've kept the 3 points, but I haven't heard any responses yet to those points. So I'm just want to make sure that if we don't answer tonight, we're going to answer later, because that's kind of how I understood it.
Yeah,
Yes,
do
thank
we
you.
respond or don't really know?
We were what we initially said is that we would have the young people share their concerns. We're just listening tonight,
Right.
and then we're going to bring it back to our churches to address the issues that they have.
Right.
But if the young people have any solutions that they want to give us as to how we can work on some of these issues, then we're asking them to do that.
Okay. I believe we're on the same page. Thank you, Simone.
Devin, did you have something to say?
Oh no, I was just wondering if we are supposed to like respond to each other's like questions, all that, or
If you want to. If not, it's okay too. I mean,
okay. I guess it's my turn. I don't really have a question. I'm just here, listening in. Name's Javon Justin James. When it comes to the whole football thing, I mean, I hear that like it's obviously too late now, and I can see the resentment the kid has or like, not the kid, but the adult now has for having to miss out on a part of life because of the Sabbath. I think that has to do with the whole idea of priorities and what's more important to you. Uh, the whole thing about compromise. I don't have the answers, but I know I would probably do the exact same thing that you did, where it came to not letting my kid do football or anything like that on the Sabbath, especially if it's happening during church. If it's something like at 4 p.m. where it's technically the Sabbath, but in all reality, there's like 3-4 hours left. I might cave. I couldn't tell you. The other thing I wanted to bring up was when it came to the people in church that were talking about, well, I guess you, the other lady,
Alana.
you got to remember that church is full of broken people because we're all broken in some sort of way. We all sin. We all do that. I think that one problem that I know me growing up as a youth was I looked up to these people. So I would think that, well, you're in church, so you must be this, this, and this. But after having this, and this happen to me, I realized, okay, they're in the same boat as me. They're not perfect people. Some people are way too aggressive. Some people are way too this. Some people are way too that. It's always going to be a problem in church because none of us are Jesus. I don't know if anybody feels the same way or feels differently, but trying to get the discussion rolling.
I feel like I understand your point about church being filled with broken people, but it poses a problem when the brokenness is perpetuated from the excuse of brokenness. So I understand that we're broken people, but we should never get to the point where we believe that we are beyond correction. And because this person something that I have been doing since, as Jamaica would say, donkey was a boy, since my eyes were by my knees, that I can't change. And I feel like that is one of the biggest problems as to why youth don't really like to interact with certain population within the congregation is. And then because me looking at it from a biblical perspective, my brain goes, yo, Abraham was 75 when God started with him. None of y'all 75. So you have no excuse as to why you can't look at something from a different perspective. Not because your church has been doing this all this time. If you have somebody new come in, it means that this is opportunity for growth because now you have another character that you need to cater to. And so I understand the whole matter of brokenness, but the issue is when I'm trying to lead you with my brokenness down the same broken path that I've been going on for the longest while, we're not going to end up anywhere good.
Thank you.
I agree. Just to like add on to that, I think it's important to also like some people like yes we're all broken, but there are some times where people don't want to acknowledge the fact that there may be faults in them or that they could be wrong, and I think that's another important thing to just emphasize that like yes we're broken, but the first step for us to like kind of grow and move past certain barriers is understanding that there's something wrong internally and that we do need a savior, and we don't have all the answers as humans, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you.
You know, from my experience, growing up in the Adventist church, I always tell the joke that I was born on a Friday night and I went to church on Sabbath morning because I was born in the Adventist church. Just like Stefan, I love playing soccer, and I know when I was at a younger age, I was playing, always playing with the big guy, with the big man them. I was like one of the only kid playing with the big man. But just like who was it? Just like Shireen, I wasn't with her son. I wasn't allowed to pursue that path. And sometimes when I play soccer nowadays, and I was like, oh, I remember when I could run fast. I remember when I could do this, and can't do it no more because I'm at the age where most soccer players would start to retire now. It makes me think sometimes like what could have been, because I have a cousin who ended up playing football in the NFL, and I remember being at that young age when we were young, being more athletic than him, you know. But it happened that he left Jamaica, moved to the States, and you know, drifted from the church and ended up playing. And you know, do I regret it? No. I feel that the path that I've gone onto, I like it. You know, if it wasn't for the no, I wouldn't have met like some of the people that I've have in my life that are,
Your wife?
true. That too. Yes, yes, yes. I would have met none of you guys that I'm talking to. And who knows, the people that I would have been around, would they have been a good influence onto my life? Would I been able to be a good influence to the young people that I've been a good influence to, stuff like that. So make me think, you know what? It was for a reason. God wouldn't, he knows what he was doing. God knows what he was doing. And maybe if I was in that situation, things would have been different. And you know what? I'm just happy that, sometimes that no that you get is, it's for the best.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So again, those who came in recently, I posed the questions that we're going to be asking, and all we're doing is we just want to hear if you want to share any of your experiences, whether good or bad, frustrating, happy experiences that you've had in the church that you just want to, you know, air out and share. Is there anyone else?
I can say for myself, just to piggyback onto what Gareth was just talking
Sure.
about. I was never the most athletic, sportsy person, but I loved sports, and potentially I could have gone further if you have encouragement. And I think that's often the case with youth. I think youth are very talented and can go forward in so many various different directions, career-wise, vocationally. But sometimes, yes, that the conflict between how do you embrace and how do you approach the Sabbath can actually be a limiting factor. And I always go back to Devin Franklin, because I've heard him. He was told the same thing. He was discouraged from, you can't be in entertainment and be an Adventist Christian. It's a compromising position. Yet God has placed him, and God often does that. God often places us in positions and in places where we can be of influence. So I think personally, I think it would be really good if our churches started talking more about, exploring the types of choices you would have to make, exploring and allowing the avenues of support and how you would think through those things, as opposed to just because I respect Gareth's position, and that's good if he could come to that point. But there are many people who actually do have regrets about that or wish that it could have been different. And I think it's a safer space to allow people to think that through, make those decisions, and as opposed to discouraging it. And I wish that's one thing that our churches did more openly, not just with sports, but just with some other topics as well.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I think some of the differences is like when you're a young person and you're interested in something and it's not necessarily associated with church, those people around you, they're a lot more encouraging in that thing, and they kind of push you more. Whereas if you were to like speak on that in church, you're not necessarily having that same support system. And especially for someone like who may have low self-esteem, and you're kind of in that stage where you're trying to figure out who you are, if there's people that may not necessarily follow what like how you're raised and stuff like that, who are interested in what you're interested in, you'll be more inclined to like go in that direction. So I think it's important that we embrace people more rather than discouraging, as Lorianne said.
Thank you.
That's an interesting point made there, and it brings back to my mind a comment that was made by Eric Thomas. Anybody know who Eric Thomas is?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
And he was talking about his own son and wanting to play sports, and how he supported him through it. But the way I understood it is that even if it meant that he had to do some things in Sabbath, he still supported him through it. This was like more than 10 years ago when he was young in his ministry. And another point he had made was how he had dropped the, no, I don't know if this is Eric, this is probably another pastor. It was a pastor though, who mentioned how his child wanted to go to the club, and it was Friday night, and he still dropped him to the club and prayed for him. This is an Adventist pastor.
Well,
They're also Americans, okay? So I don't know. But I say this to say that there is compromise and there is compromise. Now, I don't know what kind of message we send when, okay, my child wants to do this, even though it's against one of the commandments and it's Sabbath, because this is their dream, because this is their joy, because this is their focus. I'm going to help them to accomplish that anyways, Sabbath or no Sabbath. So I made that point because I think that's one of the takeaways that we probably need to have a further discussion on. When is a compromise not really a compromise and really something else? And while I'm on that topic, just like Alana, I came from a non-Adventist church. She came from Pentecostal. I came from Church of God to the Adventist church. And honestly, if I was in Jamaica when I became, well, if I was still in Jamaica, I don't think I'd ever be an Adventist back then, at the time when I converted. So it happened here in Toronto. And for me, having grown up in a Christian home and understanding how sacred Sunday was to us and everything else, of course, it's man-made. Now, you know, all the biblical reference to that. Okay, the Sabbath is the Sabbath. I accept the Sabbath. But I'm telling you, I went into serious shock when I joined the Adventist Church in Canada. And this is like 1988, 1989. And I'm thinking, wait a second. I thought Sabbath was holy. I thought Sabbath was sacred. I thought Christians don't do this and Christians don't do that. And I'm telling you, it was the first few years, it was rough. I even stopped going to AY. I just went to morning service, just go through the motions because, you know, I married an Adventist man and whatever. I just kept up with it. But I was really troubled by the low, the decreased level of spirituality on a day by day basis. It was like it was all reserved for this 24-hour period. And fast forward to today, I think we have come a long way. But for young people looking on, we're all in different homes. We have different influences around us. We have parents and guardians and grandmas and uncles and aunties who are all Sabbath keepers. And depending on when you embrace the Sabbath, whether you were born in it or whether you were introduced to it, I think there has to be some sort of a consistency in our walk so that the people around us who we're supposed to influence and encourage are not discouraged instead by our lack of a true Christian spirit 24/7, not just for Sabbath. You know what I mean? I think that's still a problem in our church. And again, that may not be a problem that any one group can fix because, again, remember the church is the people. We're all individuals making our own contributions to the Church of Christ, you know? But I'm telling you, as a young person then, I was really perplexed about what Christianity really was because growing up in church on Sunday, I was a Christian. Coming into the Adventist church, I was thrown for a loop. I stayed with it just because I accepted the Sabbath. But I was very concerned. I'm sure somebody else can relate to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stefan did say that he had a question, and I promised that he would go next.
Yes. The question isn't related to what you were saying, sis. So I just thought of it. So as a person grows, they become more aware and they get knowledge from what they observe in people's lives. And it's very important that young people respect their older people. Like for instance, their parents or the elders of the church, their bosses, the various people, the teachers, various people in society that they meet daily. But what should a young person do when they're faced with a situation where they have discovered what is right from the Bible, from the lives of others, and now they see a situation in which an older person is doing something wrong. How should a young person react to that? Especially if it's a person that the young person is around, like an elder, for example. If an elder is doing something wrong in church, in front of the young person or to the young person, should that person correct them, like what the Bible instructs, to correct people and admonish? And how should a person go about doing that?
I want to put an input to that. Something that I have learned that I try to do for the most, and then something that in society that also annoys me is that a lot of times we have a big issue with differentiating the person from the problem. And a lot of times we have a baby out with bathwater mentality. For example, like if I'm friend with X and X is not friend with Y, then all of a sudden I'm not friend with Y because I'm friend with X. That is a problem within our church or just society in general. So when we're faced with a problem that, okay, all of a sudden Elder X has a problem, we see Elder X as the problem instead of realizing that Elder X has a problem. So I think that's a good place to start as it relates to addressing that. And in that way we can better address the problem with Elder X, approaching Elder X as a person rather than saying, friend, you are this and you must not do that. So I feel like that's somewhere that we need to start as people as it relates to addressing the problem. And then I've also discovered that it is kind of out of place for me who, if I don't have a relationship with you to the point where we can sit and have a conversation about something like that, I don't necessarily think it's my place to just roll up in your space and say, aha, you must fix this just because. So the
start off
problem,
like that.
if you don't have relationship, there is no point in trying to get people to change their ways, because then all of a sudden they take it as an attack because they do not understand your character.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to add to this. I'm not coming up with an answer. I'm just sharing my experience.
Sure.
So
Before that, well, I'll let you speak. I just wanted to let everyone else know, if ever you wanted to ask something or comment, you can actually just message Brianna and she'll help you. She'll insert you, just so that people would have. If there's someone else who wanted to speak, you can speak. Just message Brianna privately, and then she'll get you in. Go ahead, Laurie.
okay. Or if anybody else wanted to speak to this, I'm okay with waiting and saying something after.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I was just gonna say I've actually had the same experience, like what Stefan's kind of describing. I remember when I was like 14, 15, I would say, and I would attend Bible study at my church, and I didn't go every week, but I'd go maybe like once a month, right? I enjoyed Bible study with the church, but I wasn't always there. And to be honest, majority of my friends, or not many other youth were there. And there was one prominent elder who still to this day remains a very prominent elder in my church. I made a comment. And I don't know if he just didn't like the comment I made or whatnot, but you know, he ended up like kind of defacing me in front of the rest of the body of the Bible study in a way to say, oh, she doesn't even come to Bible study anyway. She doesn't regularly come to Bible study anyway, so don't listen to her. And he said this in front of everybody. And, so I say that to say that I'll never forget that experience. Not that I'm like begrudging him, but it's the reality is it was an inappropriate way to respond to a young person. And even as an adult now, as I encounter working with this individual, from time to time, the way in which they go about approaching things is problematic. So again, same thing. It's not the individual, it's the behavior. But what I do find is this person remains unchecked in the church after 20 odd years because they hold a certain level of respect and credibility. But, and that person actually is pretty good with the youth on most occasions. But I think part of the difficulty I find is one, how as a youth was when I was 14 or 15, how was I going to respond back or approach or ask for correction from an elder of the church, right? So I think part of it is one, I really wish somebody had, come up to me after, or maybe I had gone to somebody and shared how I felt about it. Um, but I think everybody else was there too, and they saw what happened. And if people don't realize that that was inappropriate, and if nobody addresses that, I think that's also part of the problem with our church. I don't think things are necessarily addressed with.
Mhm. Mhm.
Exactly. I don't think sometimes things are appropriately addressed, even by leadership. Like I find that sometimes a lot of the leadership, the pastors, the elders, they just want to roll with it and just leave peace to peace, let peace be peaceful, and don't make any waves. But reality is, people can't correct behavior unless it's been checked.
I feel that part of that is due to our Caribbean culture, which is in of itself is a little bit of a flaw. That we are taught this whole careful how you speak to your older adults, not realizing that we are supposed to be able to speak to them on a level playing field, especially when there's error in the room. So I feel like that is something that we need to check as Caribbean people. I don't know if it's probably a Black people thing, but that's something that we need to check on a cultural level, where we need to realize that we need to be able to speak up. But then because we don't get the experience of speaking up as often, and when we finally do, we do it like an eruption, and then it turns out into a situation where they're addressing the fact that you were rude to them rather than realizing that, nah, friend, we're just still talking about your behavior that we didn't like. Can we address that while we're here, regardless of how we said it? But then it becomes a whole different thing unto itself. And we're not really taught how to raise our voice to leadership in the church. That is not something I believe that we're educated to do.
Thank you. And thank you so much also, Lorianne, for sharing your experience.
Yeah.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Okay.
I just
Hi,
I heard
Tiffany.
everything on the hi guys. I heard everything on what was said about like attitudes, and it kind of brought up past experiences I was thinking of. So people like Gareth, anyone that was in Pathfinders knew that I kind of love Pathfinders. Like I love the camping. I love interacting with the other clubs especially too. And for me, after a while, Pathfinders became like such a job. It became something that we were forced to do. And Sunday Pathfinder meetings weren't even about like the drilling. It wasn't about the drumming. It was about, oh, but did you read your what were they called? Your weekly Bible stories and writing what you learned, and if you didn't do that, you can't participate in the other things that we're doing. And it was like, okay, that's crazy. But then also on the attitude thing, we had a huge Pathfinder talk, at least at my church, and there was a point in time where our leaders, no names because I love them all, but they started like yelling at all the Pathfinders all the time, yelling at each other. And we all had to like, I remember one day a few of the older ones, we were like, well, you guys have to, no disrespect to you, but you have to step back and realize when you leaders are yelling at each other, you're literally showing us how you treat each other, how you're expected to be treated, and then coming and yelling at us too. And it's like, when I remember when the first time I think I ever kind of talked back to an adult was when at Pathfinders, was when I was told to bring people to the washroom, and next thing, miscommunication was told. I was being yelled at in front of like the whole camporee, and I was like, wait, what you're not gonna do is talk to me because my mom doesn't even talk to me like that. So I don't see why you feel the need that you need to too. And I realized that was wrong, now that I'm older and wiser and understanding. I could have approached it better, but it was like, it was so easy to do that because that's what I saw,
Mm-hmm.
And everything, even with the leaders of our church, when you hear them in the sidelines gossiping and all this thing, like you're teaching your own congregation how to treat yourself and how to treat each other. And that's why I like what Lorianne said. I can't remember the exact words, but like something along the lines that people like won't change until they're checked, or like if you guys heard what she said, it was powerful. So I just wanted to comment on that and commend that. But yeah, continue. That was my 2 piece.
Thank you for
Thank
sharing,
you.
Tiffany.
Thank you.
So yeah, just what Lorian was saying. One of the problem is where um, an adult might do something to a young person, and another adult sees it but doesn't say anything about it. That's a big problem. If if myself and adult say something or do something wrong to a young person and Alana sees it and doesn't say nothing, doesn't doesn't check me like Lorian said, then Alana is at fault too. Like everyone who ignores it is at fault. A particular church that I looking for the word. Anyways, at a church, there was a big disconnect between the young people and the older folks. It got to the point where the pastor had to have a meeting with the young people and some of the older folks who the disconnect with was with. Um, we were in the meeting, and just like how we are here, people are letting their feelings be known and letting what's on their mind and all of that. And in the middle of it, one of the older person like gets up and say, because at this time the young people were in charge of like doing the soundboard and communication and all that stuff, and the older person jump up and says, um, the young people are incompetent.
Ooh.
And the pastor just stood there and not say anything. And that's where the problem is. As like as the leader, as a pastor, you should have shut that down like immediately. Like, yo, you can't say that. I don't think that was correct. Maybe word it a different way or something. And that's where the problem is. Like, they're pushing things under the rug, they're ignoring some of the problems, and it's affecting the young people.
Mhm.
Like, praise be to God, the young man that they aimed at, he's still, he's still at church, last time I checked. But like there are other young people that was there with them that are no longer at church. And it started right there and then when that person jumped up and said the young people are incompetent. Like I remember I was in the room and like I was walking out and I heard it so loud. I was like, and all I know was the young man just ran out behind me, run past me, run outside, like in tears, like, in tears. I had to go and like find him and try to calm him down, like, and I'm done for now. I'm done for now
Yeah.
because it started to, I'm done for now.
Thank you. Yeah. Before we continue, I am a pastor. If there's any youth who have had that experience on behalf of pastors, I am sorry. That is wrong of the pastors not to to stand up where things are where people need to be stood up for. I look back on my experience as a youth pastor, and yes, there were times where I was like that because of fear, because I was just a youth pastor thinking, like I was afraid to stand up to people who were in power, and I'm sorry, and on behalf of the pastors, we're sorry. That should not have happened. And thank you so much for sharing.
I would just like to add a brief comment on this past conversation. Now, many of you don't know me personally because I've only been in Durham region for the last 2 years, the East region, should say. But, you know, again, as I said at the top, that I didn't grow up in the Advent faith, but I converted. But I've had experience with lots of situations, having served in various roles, a church, etc. And the truth is, not all our pastors have the ability to be effective as others. not all our pastors were called to be pastors. I must be brave and say that. I think we have at least 5 pastors on the line here right now. You know, some just, try something they maybe felt they were called, but some struggle. There are some pastors in our conference who are struggling with their role, with their ministry, and that's just a fact. Having said that, though, the bottom line is that we are all on a journey to get to the kingdom. And while we respect authority and we respect the fact that they've been placed in a congregation and to lead a flock here or there, we have to remember that the pastor alone cannot lead the church, cannot run the church. I mean, there are some of the pastors who feel that this is my domain. I call the shots here. I am the dog and I walk the tail. But our pastors need us to help them to complete the work that God has called them to do. Some are weaker than others. Some are frustrated. And let me tell you something. Pastors have their own problem at home too. They're not all perfect people who walk around and they have no care in the world just waiting for your phone call at 3 a.m. in the morning to tell them your problem. They have their problems. They're humans. And so when we see behaviors that aren't checked or behaviors that are not Christ-like, we owe it to each other, whether you're the pastor, you're the elder, or you're just the janitor who cleans the church, we owe it to each other to do our part in encouraging each other to come on up a little higher. So it's not just okay to stand by and criticize and say, he's this, that, and that, or, we're our brother's keeper. And it's so unfortunate that it happens so often where our young people have been discouraged in their walk because of the actions of elders and youth leaders and pastors. But we're all in this together. And we cannot stand back and say, like some of us run from church to church. We want to know who's preaching this week, who's preaching next week. I'm not going to that church this week because I don't like the pastor. I don't know how we going to do this heaven thing, But remember, we got to turn those searchlights on ourselves. And we got to remember that we're all at different stages in our spiritual growth. And we have to do what we can to buoy each other up. And that's just my encouragement. We're going to face adversary. We're going to face all kinds of things. Our pastors struggle too. They're humans just like the rest of us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nick's Lats. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that right, but
That's okay. I'm also Nicole, that works too. I two things that came to mind while this conversation was going on. One popped up in my mind prior. I feel one of the biggest issues, the brother that spoke first, who spoke about his experience of growing up in Jamaica and how going to church became a little mundane. I feel like one of the biggest issues that we run into as young people, or even just people in the church, is that we are told so much about what we should do and not do on Sabbath, but so little about how to fine-tune our relationship with God, that doing the right things feels more like a chore rather than something that just flows naturally. And I feel like that is one of the biggest problems that we face as young people, is that we're all into this thing and we're like, yeah, you go to church, you get up at this time, you don't do this, you don't do that, get off your phone, do this, that, whatever. You got to go to Pathfinders, got to join the choir, got to do this. But at the end of the day, we're so busy that we miss that time to actually learn who God is, so these things just flow naturally. That's biggest problem number one. And with that, our parents and the older adults get so used to telling us what to do, and we must do it this way and do it that way because this is how we've been doing it since time, that they forget that we ourselves are volunteers. This is because then anything outside of that is slavery, and this is why young people leave the church. because it feels like it is a chore. And no, I don't want to get up and clean the house on a Sunday morning. It's the same way I don't want to do this thing every Sabbath if it feels like a task. I personally, like, I don't go to work. I come to the conclusion I'm not going to work if I don't like my job. The same way I don't want to go to church if I don't like what's going on in the building. And if my only purpose to come to your church is to ensure that your program that you planned for that Sabbath runs smoothly because you want it that particular way, I'm not interested in that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, can I make a quick comment?
Sure,
Sure.
go ahead.
Hi, if for people who don't know me, my name's Tiffany, by the way. And there is more than one, sorry. I just wanted to just speak on like as the other Tiffany said, like not even just specifically with Pathfinders, but I know we have come across several different situations where it came across very problematic. But one thing I've realized growing up, because honestly I've suppressed so much of these issues, because I'm like, at the end of the day, like, I'm not really coming for these people, you know? So one thing that I realized is that it's very hard for older people as well as younger people, but I realized for the older generation to really see outside of themselves when when someone has a difference of opinion, or if they don't agree with someone, like a young person's actions or what they're doing, and etc. And I find that the issue is if someone was to make a comment, or as other people said, having an issue with, as a young person addressing older people, is that they see respect in a different light than young people. And I realize because some people will see respect as being treated as an authority figure. And I saw this on a post, and it really spoke to me, and I kept this in mind because it's like relatable to me in all walks of like throughout my daily life. But I really noticed this in the church that like a lot of people, they believe being respected in terms of being treated as an authority figure instead of a person. So if someone doesn't believe that you're treating them as an authority figure, what they're saying is, if you don't like, if they're saying, oh, if you don't respect me, I won't respect you. But essentially what they're meaning is, if you won't treat me like an authority figure, I won't treat you as a person. So I feel like people need to understand that just there needs to be like a basis of respecting a person as an individual and how you come across a situation. Because if you feel like the person, like for older people, if they feel like the young person isn't treating them as like quote unquote an authority figure, but they're just trying to explain the differences of opinion, it tends to be very problematic, if you get what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. After Gareth, we're gonna be ending at 9 o'clock. That's about 17 minutes from now. So after Gareth, I want to give an opportunity if there's anyone else who'd want to speak, somebody who hasn't said anything yet. After Gareth, you have your chance to either say something in chat, message Brianna, unmute your mic, and just talk. But someone who hasn't spoke, that I know there's someone out there who wants to say something that hasn't said anything. After Gareth, we'll give you a chance. Go ahead, Gareth.
I'll make it quick. So, based on what the last Tiffany just said, it is true. You know, people see disrespect as not, not if you don't see them as an authority, they take it as a disrespect. And just to connect back with what Nicole said, and that if things are not done their way, it's wrong. There are too many times a young person or even someone else, even between adults, you have an idea or something, but if it doesn't matches with that said person, that other person, it is considered wrong. It's considered not Adventist because that's not the way how we grow up doing it. And I didn't do this when I was young, and my mom didn't do this, and my mom's mom didn't do this. But sometimes they need to understand that this is not your mom's and your mom's mom's and your mom's time. Things have changed. We have to evolve. Take, for instance, live streaming, right? Some people are so against having live streaming in a church. Why? All right. But look now, COVID without live streaming, some of them, what? It's funny, there were people who were like, and I'm gonna be real. At my church, there were people who didn't want live streaming. We've been talking about it for the past couple years before Pastor RJ, before Pastor O'Connor, but it keeps being put on the back burner. And look, as COVID hit, we got two nice cameras. We got everything popping, and we're live streaming. Because they don't see the vision of what someone else does. They just have tunnel vision. I don't know what Nicole's saying, but I think she's agreeing with me. They just have tunnel vision to what they're used to. And if a young person come and say, look, we can do this way and that way, but if it doesn't match with their way, it's just wrong. Last point. Alana mentioned something earlier about being in a department. Another thing that I noticed, a lot of church boards are made up of the older folks. A lot of church boards are made up of the older folks. And when, people start to say, okay, there need to be some young people on the board. They agree, but they put the young people in the position, but still micromanage every single thing that they do. I remember the first time, I've been AY leader for about 6 years, 6 years, Nicole? Okay, so I remember my first board meeting. I go in with, because I speak to like me and the young people, even though some of them are younger than me, I treat every single one of them with the same level of respect, and I treat them how I would want them to, treat me. So I spoke with them and I'm like, what do you guys want to see? What do you guys want to do? And I remember the first board meeting, I went in with 6 items for the board meeting. 6. I went up, AY time, I stood up. The AY department would like to do such and such. Number 1. No. Okay, all right. The AY department would like to do such and such. Number 2. No. The AY department would like to do such and such. Number 3. No. At this point, honestly, I feel like the tears were starting to come down. Like no lie. And trust me, sometimes they come very easy. I feel like it was coming, and it was the elder in charge of youth. He stood up he stopped everything and he stood up and he's like, are you guys listening to yourselves? This young man, you've given this young man the position of the AY leader. He came up with some items, and every single thing you guys hear, you're turning down. Like, you guys need to do better. So the 4th one, somehow they agreed. But I think that was the only one they agreed with. Out of the 6, they agreed with 1. But it just goes to say that, if it doesn't line up with, certain members of the church, that core group of, older folks that run the church, if it doesn't line up with their vision, it's just wrong. And that's where we need to change. Like, we need to have more young people in positions to make decisions. Because, and I'm just gonna be real, some of these older folks, their decision making and their mentality is outdated. Like, the young people have so much you know, new things, so much, you know, resources, so much ideas that can make our church better. But the fact of the matter is, they're not in the position to make those decisions. And that's my all for tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Tanya will be next, and then Pastor Scott.
Okay, hello everyone. Garrett basically said most of what I was going to say a while ago, because the young people are our future, right? We need to give them the opportunity so that they can grow. And my experience is that the older heads, they're so, what should I say now? They are so conforming the old culture. They don't want to let go. It's like when the young persons bringing new ideas, it's like they're like, no, that can't work, or no, that's against the church, this, and you know, is that there's so many flaws and there's so many negative things, is that you're pushing the young people away. So the most you can do is at least give them the opportunity to say, okay, let's hear them. Let's see what they're gonna come with, you know, take a different approach to it, you know, and see how it will work out. Just give them that space. So I don't want to go over it because Garrett already laid out. So that's one. Another thing is I'm gonna pick it back to what Jordan and Lauren said earlier on about oh God, it just missed me. It's in regards to giving okay. So most of you know my son, right? And one of the problems that well I'm facing with him is that he wants to be an actor, and no, my daughter also wants to be an actor, right? Right, actress. So they're saying, okay. I said to them, okay, guys, I'm not saying that you can't be an actor and actress. However, Christianity comes first, or I said to them, God comes first, right? And you're like, but mom, this person is Adventist and they're doing it. I'm like, yes, but don't watch that person, right? You need to know God for yourself. And I'm your mother, and I'm going to do the best as I can, right? In terms of leading you to what I believe is the truth. And I also get other advice from other persons. But I'm telling you, I'm having a struggle because they see their friends get a bit older, also family members, some Adventists, some not Adventists, who is doing things on the Sabbath that should not happen, just like going to the movies, I mean, like broad daylight, Sabbath morning, like, you know, working, playing, going to games and stuff, and they're like, they think that they're, I'm like, what should I say, no, hiding them, or, you know, like covering them up, or I don't want them to be exposed. And I'm like, guys, the struggle is real, but there are certain things that you have to do. And as a mother, I'm gonna make sure that, you know, that this is done until when you reach of that age when you can decide on your own. But until then, it's gonna be this. So I just want to say that, you know, I think it would be good to have a discussion around that, Lorian, at church, in terms of, you know, the choices that they should make, you know, from now, because it's, I mean, well, he's a teenager and she's a teenager right now. So it's like they're in that stage where they're making decision, right? So you want to make sure that they're making the right decision at the right time. And the last point I want to make is that if young persons go up and they perform, and it is not up to your standard or, you know, what you're expecting, instead of discouraging them, try to talk to them in a way that, you know, that I don't feel like, you know, what they did is like so bad, right? Because I have had that experience with my son, and he's like, you know, I'm not gonna go back. I'm not gonna go back, and you know, I'm like, no, you can't do that. And I would say to him, like, listen to me, you have other friends, because they have like the Shona, the Tiffany's, all of those guys who can encourage in you. Even Garrett, you have Simone, Lauren, the whole works, right? He knows all of you guys. And I'm like, you can do this. You can do this. I'm talking about Dylan. That's it.
Thank you.
Hello, guys. How's everybody doing? Can you hear me?
Good.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I've been listening to the conversation. It's very enlightening. As the saying goes, the more things change, the more things stay the same. I remember when I was a youth pastor, it was my first assignment at Mississauga Church, and I'm walking, so you may hear some cars passing by. Might get a little loud, but I was youth pastor, just late 90s, and I was up for my first assessment, and an assessment reviews several key areas of a pastor, his spiritual life, administration, evangelism, what have you. And, once that's done, you have to meet with conference administration, and they go through it, and they kind of talk to you about some areas that might need improvement and so forth. I had that assessment done, and most were fairly okay. It was my first year. I was still green behind, wet behind the ears, as they say, and a little green, immature, and still needed some growth and maturity, obviously. And but I remember a good few of them. One in particular, I was quite negative. Nothing was redeemable about me, nor my talents or skill sets or my calling. As far as that person was concerned, I wasn't called. That person thought that I wasn't worth serving as a pastor, and they wanted to know why I couldn't be more like Dr. Earl Cameron. He was the senior pastor at that time. That was quite hurtful. And I think the more positive or affirming ones kind of helped me over that hump. And I had the assessment done with administration. It was done. Now, I have not seen those assessments until I became youth director. It was the first set of papers that someone said, hey, there's some papers here for you. I'm like, what papers are you talking about? And I opened up the package, and there was there was a stack of papers that I'd seen before. And of course, these lists of persons who were very negative towards me. I look back and I reflect on those moments, and I think about where God places us and where God takes us to, and I think that God has so much in store for each one of us, despite whatever disadvantages that we come to the table with. And I use my experience to speak about young people, that I'm really concerned when I hear that adults in our churches speak so very negatively about our young people. And I don't know what it is that we could do to make the changes as adults and maybe leaders around this virtual room. My assumption might be that maybe they miss their youth, or maybe they see that youth are getting away with so much and they're still able to function and still be able to have influence. I really don't know why it is that we hear adults speak so very negatively about youth. When you hear leaders or pastors, I won't call any names, say, youth are bringing down the church of today. I just can't wait to go retire and live in my retirement, because I can't stand them. I can't stand being around them. And I wonder if, as adults, we actually take an introspective look at our own lives when we were broken and when we didn't have, and when we, as we point a finger at someone else, don't we recognize that there are several fingers pointed right back at us? We were young too. I mean, we had energies and we did stupid things and we messed up and we fumbled. And yet here we are. We're thriving, doing what we believe God has called us to do. So it's very uncomfortable for me to hear these kinds of commentaries. And especially in light of the fact that the word speaks so very eloquently about how we should view young people. Solomon, after all of his years, turns back and he looks back at his life and he says, don't forget your creator in the days of your youth. Those are the seasons, your youthful seasons, when you're not old, you have no gray hairs, you have all the energy in the world, and your life is well ahead of you. That's the time to remember your creator. So what? Our young people are remembering their creator in their youth, and they may go to a party once a year, or they may slip up at some point, or something. they're attempting to do the fact that they're at a church, the fact that they're singing on the praise team or on the choir is a testament in and of itself of God's awesome faithfulness and providence in the life of young people. Another passage that comes to mind is the one that talks about how, let no one despise your youth. Like, if we claim to be people of the word and living based on the word of God, how is it that we forget that passage? God has not given us any license as adults to despise or denigrate or bring to ruin by our words. James talks about our tongues. They kill, they destroy. He's not given us any license to do that to our young people. If anything, he's given us the license to lift them up, to speak power in their lives, to speak a powerful future, the same kind of future that God promises to all of us. I can go on because I've heard multiple stories even before this conversation. But I think for young adults and youth leaders and elders and pastors in this room, I think one of the things that we can do is, in terms of solutions, is help our young people create allies. There's an elderly person or an elderly man or someone, he or she may or may not be on the board, but they have what is called de facto leadership. They have the air of the people. People listen to them. Find those people and have those people be an ear to young people. Share with them the struggles of young people, the pains, and also the hopes and the futures that young people are talking about for themselves. I think every church, in terms of allies, should have a youth elder. Have a youth elder that lives with and communicates and speaks to and relates to and helps young people in mentorship. After all, that's discipleship. So I think allies is one way that we can help to make wrongs right. I don't think that there's anything with those same allies helping to speak with pastors and other leaders to speak on behalf of young people and to get young people involved in so many different aspects of the church life so that young people can see themselves as having value. Because I believe that the youth of today are not just leaders of tomorrow. I think they're leaders of today in training. And if we don't begin now, where's our church going to be? And who are the powerful leaders that we hope to have as leaders of tomorrow from the core of our young people if we're not doing the training and the mentoring in the here and now? So just a few thoughts. There's a whole lot more, of course, but I figured I'd share a few reflections on some of what has been shared.
Thank you, Pastor Scott. Shireen said she had some tips for us. And so at this time, Shireen will speak and then we will close off to end this session.
Sorry, Brianna and Pastor Beck, are we able to extend the time a little bit more? I have some youth messaging me. They have some things they want to continue to share or ask about. If that's okay with you guys.
It's okay with me if we want to continue. At the same time, I understand that some people do have to leave. So if we want to continue, we can continue. But those who do have to leave as well, feel free. Mm-hmm. But if you guys want to continue, we're here.
Okay. Thank you, Brianna. Pastor Scott made some of the suggestions I was going to make reference to. For example, having that de facto person who's in your corner. Having been on one of the largest church boards in the GTA, and I started when I was really young in leadership roles at my former church. One of the things I found helped me, and I'm going back to what Garrett said, this suggestion should have come right after he spoke, but I was just waiting my turn in order. But when there are suggestions or an agenda that you have to bring to the church board, what I learned that worked for me over the years is I have to treat it as marketing and then sales. Okay? So what I do, I find people in the church that are on the board. And I like to go to people who have young people in their homes. And when I am ready to make my pitch after I've talked to young people and sit them down with their parents, it takes a lot of groundwork, but you get better results. What I find is when I have certain people in my corner before board meeting, and I've got these strategic alliances, because I've done my marketing, now I'm going into sell. And when I pick up and get on that floor, okay, it's the same people who agreed with me outside the board. I call them by name. You know, Sister Jane, you know, we discussed and you agree this point, okay? It works. And you say, Brother Tom, you remember when we had a conversation last week and you were so passionate with me and your son Gary said, okay, yes, Garrett, it works. So you form your alliances before you go to the board, and those people agree with you outside the board, you call them by name when you get in there. It works. That's it for now. And by the way, shout out to my youth elder. He's on the call. I just noticed that he joined us. And so we need more youth elders to support our young people.
Thank you.
I see you, youth elder. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. And any other youth who want to share something that hasn't said anything yet?
Next.
Okay, hello.
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 Hi. Wait, is someone speaking?
Oh yeah, but you can go ahead, Tiffany.
Okay, thank you. Just something I wanted to quickly touch on and add on. I feel like a lot of times there's situations where youth leave because they feel like their perspective isn't being heard on certain issues that they go through in the daily life, and being able to comfortably talk on certain topics. For example, whether it's mental health or it's sexuality or it's misogyny. And a lot of these times, these situations actually occur in the church itself. And I feel like we need to give the youth the opportunity to speak on even for me specifically, like we would just like the opportunity to be able to speak on our perspective without there being a rebuttal after it. I know that oftentimes during AY services and just in general, we would have programs where we would have panels or like open discussions. Not all the time I like those certain type of discussions because it just turns into people being attacked, where there's always a rebuttal and always a nitpick or something to criticize within the conversation. And I just feel like not all the time everyone can speak on something they're not educated on, because that's essentially just being ignorant. And I'm not saying everyone's ignorant. I'm just saying that I feel like we need to start with giving them the opportunity to speak so they are educated and aware of our perspectives. And then that way they can come with an understanding whether they agree or disagree with what we have to say. But essentially, if you don't give us the platform to speak from our perspective and you nitpick everything we say, then people are going to be less and less inclined to give their input. And then that's what deters people away from coming in the first place, because they're like, well, I can't relate to this. I can't speak on my opinion. If you want to talk about dated circumstances of mental health and modesty and whatnot, and I can't relate to it, and I can't give my opinion without me just being wrong in your eyes, then I'm not going to be comfortable enough to speak the second time around, if you get where I'm coming from. So I feel like we really need to push, or like to give us the opportunity to speak on just not only social justice issues, but just in general, things that we actually relate to, because we have the same ongoing discussions, I find. And it's like the topic is there, but actual depth within the conversation isn't there. We're not elaborating and giving room to grow on these circumstances, because time changes and everything changes, and that's just how life works. Like, we all evolve and no one just stops evolving. So I feel like we need to understand what's going on in this day and age, and not just say like, we understand what's going on in this day and age, and that so and so is just different.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Next we'll have O McGowan, and after that we'll have the person who's on the line from the phone. So we'll have O McGowan first, and then I'm not sure who it is, but yeah, you'll have it after.
All right, so good night again. So my thing is though, at my church or churches I've been, I think one of the challenge that I saw, um, well, well, I'm the youth elder now at my church. We have a challenge with actually having the youth wanting to participate. Maybe what Tiffany said is an issue that was prior to I attending this church. Um, but no, it's a big challenge in getting them on board because we have created a platform and say, hey, come and fill the void in terms of we want to hear your views without you being judged or anything, and it's just a challenge to get them to, our majority of them to just come on board with that. So and I hear all the views, and it's sad when adults treat young people that way. But on the other side, I do think young people like myself and younger have a responsibility for their, for just moving forward and growing deeper with God, and also take that responsibility to find individuals who they can, other adults who they can connect with as mentors. But I do understand it's a delicate balance. So I don't know. I guess we need help in having the youth to participate. And you guys are saying you want to participate, but we should invite you to our church so you can speak. So Sherry could probably arrange something. All right. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. So my name's Asia. So I basically just wanted to talk about, I guess, kind of piggybacking off what Tiffany said and even what this gentleman said. I think, I guess an issue, at least in Philly, I know, is that I experienced personally, is like there's a lot of, I guess I could say like manipulation when it comes to the way the older people like interact with our youth. Like a lot of times, or like I guess I think it's all, I want to say it's with good intention, but I think a lot of times they'll like pull someone aside, like maybe one of the girls usually who is a lot more quiet, and you're just so different from the rest of your friends, and I wish the rest of your friends would be just like you, never change, you're just such like the perfect example of this. And they kind of like set one person against like the rest of their friend group and stuff like that, and like I don't know, and then they go back to the same youth over and over to do the same things, and then there just gets like this, I guess, I don't know, I don't want to say like hatred, but like just a bunch of animosity between the two generations, because one generation is always judging the other, and it's just a vicious cycle. Also, moving on, I also think that a lot of times when it comes to like modesty and stuff like that, I find it really interesting how a lot of times it's only focused on like our young women and our females and what they're wearing, but we never, or very rarely, at least I've never seen anybody kind of look towards what the older males are doing, and like why it's so like such a big thing. Like nobody kind of questions whether maybe their actions are also a bit questionable as well. And I think like we always talk about modesty and what we're wearing, but how come we never talk about modesty in the things you say, modesty of your mouth, modesty of your behavior, and like just kind of just how to respect people. Like that's my point of view. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Nicole, you had your hand up?
Yeah, it just brought up a very, 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 very important point regarding modesty and weird old men that we have in our churches. I've encountered a couple of them, and they're creepy. But the point that the gentleman brought up before about I think he said something along the lines of it's like our duty or obligation to grow our character with God. I agree with you, but here's the problem in that situation. When older folks are supposed to be are the ones who are professing this godliness, and this facade that they put up in front of us is what it means to have arrived, we are not interested. And thus, when you say to a youth, oh, you need to grow, but what you are seems like the destination without giving them a proper portrayal of who God is, then we're going to take another route, or we're just going to leave the chat. And that's one of the problems that you have with why young people appear to not be interested, though we are interested in spiritual things. And the next thing is, I find it's cost effect. If it is the case that one set of people or one generation has ruined the relationship with the young people, but this generation is still there, but yet they will call in a youth elder and go, haha, we created this problem, go fix it. That doesn't fix the problem if you still have these people who are going to cause the same problem that they're asking you to fix. So it then behooves the adults to say, how are we contributing to this issue that we are trying to fix, versus trying to say, let me put up, the American, I can eat, live wherever, however I want and take a pill. Doesn't really work when you're dealing with young people with different characters. And that is something I believe that we as a church need to address. So older folks got to get their acts together while we try to get our acts together. It's got to be we all got to be working together if we're trying to get to the safe destination.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone else?
I think at the end of the day, we just need. Oh, sorry. Was there hands?
Oh, go ahead, and then we
Oh
can.
no, I was going to say really quickly. At the end of the day, one thing we keep saying over and over is that we want to be that generation, that part of the church that is open with what we speak on. We need to stop this whole not even Caribbean, just like overall Christian mentality that some things cannot be addressed, because realistically, like it is in the church, a lot of Christian kids can't talk to their parents about these things, and that's so sad. So why not make the church the place where you can talk about homosexuality, where you can talk about sex before marriage, where you can do that? Is just something that I feel like we keep emphasizing over and over and again, and we're getting closer, but we're not there yet, like simple things, like even I know so many young girls have experienced this, where a man in the church may not directly touch your private parts, but they touch close enough, and you feel uncomfortable about it, but you're not going to tell anybody because everyone's going to say, well, are you looking at what you're wearing? Are you sure that's where they touch? Like, I'm not going to make up a whole excuse for no. Like, I feel like we need to be more open. That's just something I want to, since we're talking about bringing these to the boards, like, just put that in all caps. We need to be more open and transparent about everything. But yeah.
Amen. Sorry, I wanted to add on to that. My thing is, it's not whether or not people give a platform for the youth to speak, it's whether or not we're comfortable enough to speak. If you give us a platform to speak, and the minute we do, we can't really express our opinion, no one's going to want to, people are going to feel discouraged to speak. It has happened time and time again. And I know people who, I'm a very outgoing social person, so I will speak my mind because I don't like holding things in. That's just the way I am. I don't like bottling things up. But I know for other people who are very quiet, I don't want to say passive, but I guess say timid and everything, and I hear their perspectives and they don't feel comfortable in doing so. We could say, yeah, we're giving a platform to speak. Okay, but no one wants to come. No one really wants to participate and do it. But the reality is that we need to actually feel comfortable enough to express our opinions, because we want to have these open conversations. But if we feel like the minute we do, we're going to be shut down, then I feel like that is a big problem within ourselves, because that's how we don't progress within the actual conversation. Because as Tiffany said, these things will happen in society. So whether we talk about it in the church, we're going to talk about it with somebody eventually.
Yeah, like and also when we do have these conversations, please do not go after it's all said and done and be like, oh, did you hear what so and so said? But how could she say that? Because look at her family, look at what she's wearing, look how she acts, look at the mess she gets into, XYZ. Listen to what is coming out of her mouth, listen to the actual issue at hand. And like it's very difficult for people to open up and like share their mind when they open up their mouth, the first thing that other people are seeing is they're questioning where they are spiritually, or how much like where their heart is, or if they're really just, if they want attention, if they're rebelling, and all sorts of things like that. And I think
And
that's
this is
really
all being
important.
opening set in the foyer after the service, as if no one can hear you speak. Like, as if our foyer isn't like 5 feet long. Like,
And my thing is, what does my personal life have to do with giving an educated opinion? Why do you have to nitpick everything about me to prove that what I said was invalid? Like, I don't get it. Like, why does that have to be an issue? What is my family, my friends, my clothing have to do with giving an opinion? Like, that has nothing, that like what I'm talking about has nothing to do with what I'm wearing. It has nothing to do with where I sleep, how my family is. I'm just trying to express my point of view on a specific situation. And that's what I don't like, when people try to find several ways to invalidate someone's statement. And that's what I go back to with saying that's why people do not want to give their opinion, because they have been through that before. It's not whether or not, okay, you give them the mic and they have that 2 minutes to speak. It's whether or not you're actually listening to what they're saying. You can hear people talk all day long, but if it's not processing to you, then you're not getting very far. But I'm just hoping there is some change. Amen.
Like, for example, say I'm someone struggling with my sexuality, and I go and I like pose a question about that, and your first thought is, oh, she must be struggling. Okay, and so what if I am? What are you going to do about it? How are you going to help me? Don't look at me and be like, oh my goodness, an abomination, straight to hell. What are you, as a leader in the church, doing to help me work through this? Or are you just going to block out your mind and say, oh, she's too far gone for me to even take that step forward and work with her, or see why she feels this way? What might have happened in her life? Was she sexually abused? Has someone made her feel as though she's incompetent? Like, do not look at people and just be like, they're too far gone, or this is just not something I'm in. And if you're not in the capacity to help, go and find someone who you know maybe, or don't speak to the parent, because that might be another thing. But like, try, even pray with them. If you don't know what to do, just do something. But yeah, that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you. We've had Lorianne, and Gareth. Not sure which one of you want to go first.
Ladies before gentlemen.
All right, Lorianne, go ahead.
Yeah, you're such a dear. Just to, what Tiffany and Jordan are saying, one of the most difficult parts I've had in the role of a youth leader is when one youth came to me and was like, there's a youth who is being kicked out of their house and needs a place to stay. And, I go and I approach a pastor to ask, what can we do about this? Thinking, okay, we're going to rally together, because again, like what Tiffany said, church should be a safe place. If you're going to nurture people spiritually, well, if you look at Jesus' example, he was always meeting their needs first, right? And a church should be a hospital. I've heard this before. I've seen people agree with that, said that, especially when it comes to topics like what Jordan was talking about. And the reality is, when you're turned away because protocol in the church, I said it in the notes earlier, about, oh, well, this is not how things go because the church manual says this or the conference says this. And I understand the role of an organization and pastors, and I'm not picking on pastors, but we're talking about unmuting mics and pointing out some of the things that cause hindrances and barriers. And when a pastor says to a young person or a youth leader or somebody who's just reaching out for help, well, we're not able to address this, and not really point in a direction that's helpful. Like, if we're going to say, well, yeah, there's nothing our church can do, but you can send that youth to a youth shelter. Like that's a horrific answer to say, you know. And I think these are the types of things that I would like to see us have discussions about, because I can't see how many youth are going to feel comfortable bringing these topics up in the church. And it would be irresponsible almost if these are the kind of answers you're going to get from your leadership, right? And I mean, again, I understand the organizational, we have to be careful, liability, etc. But to me, the answer is not to just, say it that way and leave it. The answer is we need to, like, okay, maybe we can't respond to this one particular person because we're not particularly ready, but we need to bring this to the fold. And if we have to go right to the top, the conference, and other church, I'm sure there's a ministerial team of pastors. What do you confer? What can we do? Respond? How can we work around this? Because when you have answers like that, that's just discouraging for everybody involved. And I just don't think it shows the right aspect of what Jesus would want us to do.
Thank you.
If anybody knows Scarborough Church or have been to Scarborough Church during, this COVID period, you will see that the people who are currently running the church are the young people, right, Pastor RJ?
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny how, these are the people that are ensuring that the naysayers and the people who always have a problem can sit at home comfortably and still have service. Just a couple of weeks ago, like at the start of COVID, um, the service, it was pretty much a handful of people who were doing the services. Now that things have changed and got better, like you find more people coming in and helping and yada yada yada. But something happened the other day that got me so upset. And there are three young ladies who've been doing praise time like from COVID day one up until Sabbath gone, right? Sometime I'll sing with them, sometime I'll play the bass, but they are the main praise team that's been doing it. And can you believe the audacity of some people to, be messaging, someone and saying, oh, I like the girls doing praise time, but I think we should see someone else up there. Stuff like this is what is so disheartening to young people. And the funny thing is, like, when stuff like this are said, the young people, they do hear it back. And they were so upset. I had to sit them down. I sat them down at the front bench of the church, and they were sitting down, and I pretty much knelt down in front of them, and I'm like, guys, and I'm gonna say this to the both Tiffany's, Lashona, all the young people here, the younger ones. You see, Jordan, no matter what you guys do, no matter how good it is, there's always gonna be that one person that is not good for them. There's gonna be always that one person that is gonna find a problem with what you're doing. They're not gonna look at the fact that, you're coming out of your house every day, every Sabbath, putting yourself at risk to come and ensure that, they're having service in the comforts of their living room or their bedroom or their bathroom or wherever they are at their home. They're not going to look at that. They're going to find fault of what you're doing. But I'm urging you, young people, do not let those people, stop you from creating that bond with Jesus, from creating that bond with God. You have to know what you want. And this is exactly what I knelt down in front of them and said, look, whatever you do, there's going to be someone who's going to find a problem. But you have to know the relationship that you want with God. You have to know where you want to reach. Your goal is to reach a heaven. Your goal is to have a wonderful relationship with the Lord. You cannot let nobody else, and I even said it to them, you cannot even let me stop you from having that relationship with God. You have to know what you want and you go for it. Don't let nobody stop you from, getting to heaven.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pastor Scott.
Yes, so sorry about that. I noticed that someone had sent a message relating to why funds why funds can't. Let me see if I can read the statement. It says, "How involved is the conference with helping out churches in need? I don't understand why most of the money doesn't stay in the local church to help members who are in need." Just to clarify, I'm not sure which money the person is speaking about, so I don't know the context. But the money that is given through churches, through church members, and I just wanted to say thanks to all the church members out there who are faithfully returning a tithe when it's really tough, or offerings when it's even tougher. But the funds that are sent through by a church member through a church, if it's tithe, the church is not able to take funds from that fund, if you will, and use it as they see fit. It goes directly to conference, and conference uses those funds for the major issues, financial responsibilities that the conference covers. The conference can help. For example, we're talking about in this COVID climate, it helps via its administrative team in making sure that we get the best guidance and understanding, and that comes to us from Ontario government and Canadian government as well. And of course, risk management helps our churches and our schools to be able to return in a way that is safe and responsible for our church members, just the same. But our church has ADRA. Our church also has community services. When I say church, I mean from a conference standpoint, and other ministries, quite like youth ministries, that helps to support what's taking place in the local church. So I suppose it would have to be dependent on which need, where the conference might be able to help, depending on where the church ends. Because ultimately, where there's a need really has to be on the church's ability, because our churches are able to survive or thrive relative to the offerings, the faithful offerings that our church members return to it. We find that many of our church members return a faithful tithe, but they forget that there's great need at the local church, and it's out of the offerings, some of the intentional or directed offerings that are returned at the church, at that local church community, that is used to cover the various circumstances that the church might have, whether it be the bills paying, or like Gareth, who mentioned the 2 cameras that they purchased, or something else. And by the way, that the purchasing of those 2 cameras, they may have gotten a gift from the conference, for example. I'm not sure, but those things do happen. But ultimately, in terms of the local needs of the local church, that comes out of the offering from church members. So I hope I was able to bring some clarity to the person's query.
Thank you, Pastor Scott.
You're welcome.
All right, so we would like to thank everyone for coming out this evening. I'd like to thank you for sharing your experiences, being able to just give light to people who, like myself and the other pastors and other leaders who are here, things that you have experienced. and ways that we would be able to be more sensitive to what you're going through and how we can help you. We want to encourage you to continue on. Tomorrow, what's tomorrow? What are we doing for tomorrow?
Tomorrow will be the hot seat.
Okay. So tomorrow is the one with the pastors, correct? Where they have questions. I think it's going to be on Zoom again. So this one was more on sharing experiences. Tomorrow is going to be more on asking questions. And the questions that you've asked, so some of the questions you've had here, this is a chance where the pastors are going to be there. You can ask the pastors straight up. These questions could either be church organization questions or biblical questions, whatever questions you have, social injustice questions, whatever questions you have, you can have it for tomorrow. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Can we request Pastor John? Can you end us off with prayer?
Before Pastor prays, for any leaders or anyone who knows of anyone that is sending in a video for the Thursday night of expression, please do so tomorrow, because we want to get all the videos in, ensure that they're all, working properly, have everything ready for Thursday night.
Thank you. And I'll just read this last question. Yeah, Brianna, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, for all the youth that are online, just know that those who are on the line right now, we are all here as your support system. If anytime you feel the need to reach out to anybody for anything, we are always here and ready to and available to help you guys and hear you guys out, no matter what it is. So please connect with us in any way you feel you can, and we will be there for you. And thank you for allowing us to hear what you have to say, because we need to be your voice in the places where, like the board, where your voices may not necessarily be heard directly. So thank you for expressing all your feelings, all your experiences, and just know that we are here to support you as well.
Yes, thank you. I'll just read that, or you can read. Simone put a last thing there. You can put that there. You can read that comment there. It's the same link for tomorrow, correct? Yes. So it's the same link here. I'm sure it'll be put out again tomorrow. Pastor John?
Yes, thank you so much for having this conversation, Simone and team, and thank you, Pastor, for being a good facilitator tonight. And wherever you are, maybe we can put our hands together for our facilitator, Pastor Beck, whose daughter was just born.
And
What's the name?
Brianna. And Brianna.
That's right, Brianna. That's right. And so we could celebrate both of them in their successful facilitation of the meeting tonight. And shout out to Pastor German and other pastors who are on the call this evening. Shall we pray? Father, we're so grateful and thankful for this great honor and privilege to be part of this discussion. We've heard so much from the hearts of youth and youth leaders. We thank you for your presence, who has been here in this room. People have shared their concerns. They've shared their stories. They've also shared their hopes and their dreams as well. Additionally, they've shared ways that our church can improve to even more support our young people, to lift them up, to empower them to serve you with every fiber of their being. We pray that out of the richness of this conversation that we can implement some of these ideas and some of the strategies. And I pray that we would be able to do so in our local youth group and also in our regional team as well, so that we could be even more effective in the ministry that we deliver to our young people. We believe in Ontario Conference Youth Ministries that every youth has vision, voice, and value, and soon enough will have a lot of votes. We bless them today. We pray a covering upon each of them. We ask and pray, God, that you lead them in all truth, in every decision of life. Help them to know that, just as you have shared in Jeremiah 29, that you have a dream and thoughts of thoughts for each one of them, for a future and of a hope. We pray that they will be realized in their lives, and that they will live out every ideal that you have passed down to them, so that they may be true ambassadors in this world. Bless every youth leader they have a tough task ahead of them. They need allies. They need new ideas. Replenish their energies, replenish and refocus their thinking, and help them as they lead their young people to do so in a way that is meaningful and empowering as well. Bless every pastor who's here and all the pastors of Metro East. Bless this region in a way that brings you praise. As we separate now, we pray that you will go with us throughout the rest of the night and be with us throughout the rest of this week, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a
Amen.
good night. Thank you all for
Good
coming.
night.
Good night, my friends.
Mhm.